Okay, so Papa, you were just talking about your when you were living in Chinatown. What street did you live on?
Clay Street.
And so when you were little, your aunt owned a dry cleaner or a cleaners.
Yeah, dry clean.
And what was her name? Your aunt.
The Chinese would say, the Chinese way of the relationship is so different than, the American way of doing it. Because if you were talking about your mother's side of the family, then the aunts are called a different name. And then if you're on your father's side of the family and you're talking to, the aunts would be called another name.
Really?
It's really, I have to get the right names. So my aunt would be, I forgot what we would call her. She was on my mother's side of the family.
Okay.
So I'm going to find out if Uncle George remembers what you used to call those people.
Okay.
But right now we call her Auntie. Okay, yeah.
So Auntie, and then Auntie owned a dry cleaner, and then all the guys would gather there?
Yeah, it was like a meeting place where they talk about politics or
Really?
whatever.
At the cleaners?
Yeah, at the cleaners.
How interesting.
They didn't go to church, those guys never went to church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what would they talk about?
Oh, I don't know, all kinds of things. Since
Really?
I didn't sit in on it, but I just know that my father would come home and say what they talked about, and
Wow.
who was there today, and
Interesting. Because your father would also drop off his suits.
Oh yeah, or he would just go down to Chinatown, and on the way, down or up, he would drop by there, and lots of times, she'd serve tea,
Really?
have some tea.
That's a nice cleaners.
Yeah. Well, tea wasn't any cost, Yeah.
And so what was what did your dad do for work?
Oh, my dad, first of all, when he came to the United States, he was only 10 years old. So
What year was that, do you think?
Oh, God, he came, let's see, he was born in 1900. And so when he was 10, it would be 1910, he
was born in 1900.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah. His father sent him, to the Hawaiian Islands, and then from the they didn't have immigration in the Hawaiian Islands. You could go to what they call Tan Herong San, that meant in Chinese it meant it was a sweet smelling island. Tan Herong San. Herong is sweet smelling.
Okay.
Yeah. So then from there he had to travel by boat, I guess, to San Francisco.
That's
and
a
at
long
10 years
ride.
old, yeah. And then some Chinese person would meet him in San Francisco because they had to have a sponsor.
Yep.
So then from there he went to Sacramento, and he went to school, but then he had to pick fruit, during the fruit season. So after, I don't know what grade level he went to, but at least he could speak English and he could read, and he learned how to write too in Chinese, in Cantonese. So from there, he worked in a drugstore, over the counter. And after that, he figured, well, that's not going to earn him too much money. So he became a waiter at a boutique hotel on California Street, which is still there, Huntington Hotel.
Really?
Yeah. So he would work the morning shift, and he was room service. Yeah, people would call in what orders, and he'd take their order. Then, he would bring their orders to their rooms.
Wow.
And so then he did the morning shift, and then he would come home and rest, and then he'd go in the evening to do the dinner shift.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, those are horrible hours.
Yeah, well, but he
You do whatever you can, right?
Yeah. Later on in his life, many years later, his boss, the owner of the hotel, was Mr. Fritz.
Uh-huh.
And he became very good friends of Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz, unfortunately, didn't want to pay any income tax, so they put him in jail.
Really?
And he was willing to sit in jail while his wife managed the hotel. Yeah.
What?
Isn't that funny?
He owned the Huntington Hotel.
Yeah, and he only had one daughter. That was Dolly. So when Mr. Fritz was in jail, my dad would go and visit him. And
Really?
yeah.
What
And
a
then-
nice guy.
and
Was he
then-
a good boss?
Well, I guess he was. I mean, what my dad made and whatever little tips he made, was his salary. Then there was a
How
good,
much do you think he earned? back
I
then?
have no idea. I honestly have no idea. But he made enough money so that my mother didn't work for a while.
Wow.
Quite a while, yeah. Yeah, my mother didn't work for quite a while until after Wayman was born. And he was a little older, started school, and I think then she began to take the pieces from the Chinatown sweatshop. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, Chinatown sweatshop. We used to talk about that. The ladies would go to work, but they were paid such minimal wages.
What
But
were they making?
Well, they were making dresses for the factory. There was a Fritzy factory, and I don't think it was owned by Mr. Fritz, but
Okay.
it was called Fritzy. And they made all kinds of things, dresses and skirts, but everything was by piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone would then piece all those pieces together to make the final article.
Really?
Like, okay, they're going to do a shirt, then all the pieces got done, and then whoever that was, would finish the whole blouse, and then it would go to the factory to be sold and sent out. Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. There were quite a few of those factories because, there was a lot of different stores that they would sell. They would
Yeah.
sell for maybe Macy's, or they would sell for little boutique, shops.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of work for the women who
Yeah.
wanted to do that.
Wow.
And actually, the women from China, they didn't speak English, so they, that was the only work they could do.
Yeah, they'll take whatever job they can.
Yeah, right. And then unless
That's horrible how they had to work for so little.
Yeah, but what else would they do?
Oh yeah, I mean it's the only option. It just was an unfair time.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. But as time went by, though, and the women then began to try to go to school to get their citizenship, and they had to learn a little English, And then, of course, at home, we spoke English so much that my mother knew what we were talking about, but she couldn't talk back to us in English. Yeah.
Interesting.
A little while later, when we were all much older and we had our own houses and she had her grandchildren, yeah, she'd come down and then, she'd say some little things in English to the grandkids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you start learning English?
Well, I'd go to school. Well,
Okay.
actually, we spoke at home because my dad would speak English and he always had the news on. So, we picked up English that way. And because I had older sisters too, I was the next to the last girl in the family. So, my sisters would have started school already and they would speak English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of the kids that came from big families, a lot of the Chinese families had big families, like 10 or 12 kids.
Wow.
And the oldest child would maybe go to college, and then he or she would then pull the next kid in and help that child go to college. It was like a stepping stone.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
as soon as one gets through college,
Yeah.
they have a job and then
Yeah.
they start paying to get the other one through?
Right, yeah. Yeah, a lot of that happened that way. Yeah.
They all pulled each other up.
Yeah.
And then they also help pull the parents up later on, right?
Well, the
Help support the
parents
parents.
would actually expect them to, like they say, give the parents some money each month. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what your Gong Gong had to do. He would work and then he couldn't go to college because his parents said, "You have to support us first."
Are you
So,
serious?
Yeah. So he didn't go to college because he worked, and then when he met me and started to date me, then before we got married, I think my sisters and my parents ganged up on him and said, you have to go to college, you know. You
Whoa,
don't wanna
I didn't
be-
know that happened.
Yeah, because he worked at the post office, and they said you don't want to work in the post office the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how he started to go to college, and when he
Wow.
finished, yeah.
How'd you gang up on him? What was that conversation
Well, it
like?
was like Frank, and he was, his grades were so good in school. He was a straight A student,
Yeah.
so, and he wanted to go to college, but he had to work. Yeah,
That's a lot of pressure.
Well, he knew he had to because there's 3 boys in the family, and then Joe decided to join the Navy, so he was gone for 2 years.
Without pay? Or
Yeah.
did he get any pay?
Oh, in the Navy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they did.
So Joe was able to send some money back?
No, he didn't then at that point because
Oh.
he was gone. But it's between Johnny and Frank then. And then Johnny, he didn't finish high school because he had, at the time, his parents moved from Grass Valley to Oakland, Chinatown. They had a little grocery store on Grove Street. And, Johnny had to go work there with his dad. And then when the big stores came into town, like,
Safeway.
Safeways and, Albertsons or whatever, the business just wasn't as good because of the competition and price. Big markets can do a lot more cheaper because they get bulk prices.
Yeah.
But where, then Frank's dad, just had to do the best he could to run the grocery store.
So what did he do after that? How old was Frank's dad at that point?
Well, he was in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, Oakland Tech. Well, after they closed the store, Gung Gung and Paw Paw on Frank's side of the family moved to Stockton and Broadway Street. Mm-hmm. And then they didn't work anymore. They just,
Really?
Yeah, they just said, you just work and bring money in. And then
so Frank at that point was just barely in college. He was how old?
Oh no, he was only when you graduate from high school, you're usually 18 or 17.
And his parents had already stopped working at that point.
Oh yeah, they
Wow.
were. And then his mother, several years later, had a cerebral hemorrhage. She was 49 when she died.
Serious? When she died, 49.
Yeah.
That is so young.
Yeah, it was really sad because she was diabetic when she had this hemorrhage, and I still remember. And Johnny was very close to his mom. Johnny cried and cried and cried, and
oh, that's horrible. How old was Johnny at that point?
Golly, he must have been 20 something.
Oh,
yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah, he wasn't married yet. Because then after they moved from Oakland, he worked at a like a cafeteria. Mm. Yeah, he worked at a cafeteria.
Wow.
And from working at the cafeteria, he met a man who would come to the cafeteria to have lunch. His name was Mr. Golden, and he owned a printing shop. So he hired Johnny to work for him.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was very good to Johnny, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he worked at a printing shop a long time.
Long time.
Wow.
Yeah. A long time. Yeah. Johnny was a good worker. Yeah. And Mary, she, Gerald, he was born. At that time, they didn't know what autism was. And they knew there was something wrong with him because he wouldn't talk. And, yeah. And he looked different. I don't think you ever knew him.
Yeah, I remember he was pretty small.
Yeah. And then he looked different. Did you think he looked different than any other kids? Mm-hmm. So he did go to a school at Gene Parker on Broadway Street.
And whose son was this?
Johnny's.
Johnny's son.
Yeah.
Okay.
Donna was older. Donna was, she was very bright. She went to Berkeley. Mary of course, she was a stay-at-home mom. And she, it was really funny. Mary learned how to buy stocks from Mr. Singh, who, when Johnny and Mary got married, they lived on Washington Street, And at that time, Johnny then was still supporting the parents, but he was working elsewhere than working at the print shop. So Mary met the neighbors, Mr. Singh, and the neighbors started to teach Johnny how to buy stocks. But then Johnny worked and he didn't have much time. So Mary, you wouldn't think about it, but she was one who bought stocks, and they got, Johnny bought a lot of stocks. Johnny and Mary. Oh yeah, they eventually they had quite a bit of money, and they bought this place in an alleyway off of Union Street.
Okay.
It was like a 3-story place, and they rented out the second story and the bottom unit.
Wow, and they lived in the other one.
What? They did.
Wow.
They did. This was a
good way to do it.
Yeah. So anyway, Johnny's when he passed away, he already had sold their place in San Francisco because it was too hard to commute back and forth. So then he saved a lot of money, and he knew that someday somebody would have to take care of Gerald. So he asked Frank and myself if we would take care of Gerald if anything happened to him, and he had set aside some money, and of course the government at that time, if you had a child who was in need of help, every month they would give them so much money, and of course Johnny never spent any of that money. He just put it away for Gerald's care. So
wow.
Yeah, so we knew approximately how much we would start to work with. It was like $200,000. That's a lot of money in those days.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
Yeah, but when Donna and Ray got married, and when Johnny, then transferred the responsibility to them, that they would take care of Gerald.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was how that went. And of course, when Johnny died, he left a lot of money to Donna, and he said to Donna, you don't have to go to work. You got enough money. You don't, because he didn't want her to work. He wanted her to stay at home.
Donna,
wow.
That's amazing that he saved up that much money at that time when it was so hard for Chinese Americans to be able to earn money because they couldn't work in all the fields.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing that they saved that much.
Oh yeah. And Johnny didn't ever drive a car.
Yeah.
For a long, long time. Yeah, didn't have a car for a long, long time.
Wow.
Yeah, but when they finally decided they were going to move, Mary got really sick. So he delayed the move to Foster City. And Mary, she was in the hospital for quite a while. And then she died, which was so sad for him. Yeah, when she died, then Donna said, why don't you come down here and look for a place to live nearby us, and we could, watch you and Gerald. Mm-hmm. So that's when he bought that little townhouse in Foster City.
Wow.
Which now belongs to Donna.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. People in those generations were always teaching their children to save money. Save money for your old age.
Yeah. Mary invested in the stock market.
Yeah. She was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really learned the game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then
Very interesting.
She was the one who suggested that Gerald visit a psychologist, which he did. Every week or so he would have an appointment, because she said he doesn't talk to anybody.
Yep.
And maybe he would talk to the psychologist.
Did he?
He must have done some talking, because they continued this until he died. Yeah.
When did he die?
He died, oh God, I forgot the year that he died. It's been a while now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a while. Wow. So over 16 years.
And did he pass before Johnny?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Wow.
Luckily, that was it. So luckily,
who would have thought that?
Yeah.
After all those years of saving up for Gerald.
Yeah. Well, then it went to Donna.
Wow. And Donna was married to who?
Ray.
And then Donna passed away.
No, Donna's still here. Donna is Kimberly's mom, and
Oh.
Kimberly and Cheryl, and
I was thinking of. Wait, there was another Ray.
Ray. Yeah, you knew Ray Hansen.
Yeah.
And then Ray Tom.
Oh,
Ray
okay.
Tom, yeah, because that's how
Got it.
Donna Tom. Donna
Got
Tom.
it.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Ray worked for. He's an engineer. Forgot what company he worked for, but he's a good guy. He's the nicest guy.
Got it. Okay. So that's why Donna doesn't work.
Now?
Yeah.
Now she did work when she first graduated from college, and after she married Ray, she was working for a company, and she was a very nice position. I think she was head of the what do you call RH? Is it in charge of interviewing people for jobs?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
she
yeah.
was head of that. She did a really good job.
Wow.
And she continued working after she had the kids, because then Uncle Johnny and Mary would come from San Francisco to babysit. Can you believe it? They come from San Francisco to babysit, and then they go home
babysit
at night.
who?
The kids that
Donna's
Donna
kids?
She started having, the oldest one was not Cheryl, but the one who's married to Mark Vanderhorn or something.
Okay.
Her name was
Crystal.
Crystal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Crystal was the older one.
Okay.
Yeah. But so much history that I have to even try to remember all the things that happened. And then Donna, they went into business with, and that was just a side business, with another couple. Do you remember the stores used to have kiosks? When you say kiosk, they had those little stands. They still do have that in stores. The
Okay.
kiosk.
Yeah.
So they started selling these little animals. What did you call them those times? Do you remember?
Stuffed animals
Yeah.
inside the the claw that grabs them.
They had those little animals, and they were very popular.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I wish I could remember what those animals were called, but everybody was buying them.
Really?
So when she and Ray set up that booth, and they and another couple, they did very, very well.
Really?
For quite a few years.
Wow.
And then after that, when those animals become, other things that came in the market, then they stopped selling, and
Wow.
that's when she started to go out with Nels. Dancing.
Nels?
Nels, do you remember Nels? He's a tall Caucasian guy.
No. Who would go out dancing?
Donna.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was she still with Ray at that point?
Yeah, but she snuck away, and
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, she did. She lived with Nels for quite a while, and didn't divorce Ray.
Why?
Yeah, well, because
Or why did this happen? She wanted a dancer?
Well, she said Ray wasn't too exciting, so she decided to do that. And her parents were very much against it. They just couldn't understand why she would do something like that, So, but it happened, and then.
When was that? That must have been after all the kids were born, huh?
Mm-hmm.
After Kimberly was born?
Oh, yeah, after all the kids were born, yeah. And she started this. And then,
I never met Nels.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, I'm surprised. Because do you remember coming to the Christmas parties and but you would come from back east though, so you weren't probably in with that, because we used to get together with Ray and Donna and Tim and Val. That was the Lee side of the family, and we would do, before Christmas we'd get together and have lunch, and then our side of the family, the Chang side of the family, we would get together and have our own Christmas.
Yep.
So that's how it went, and I think that's when you came from Maine, you would stay with. I think you would stay with us.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, and then you would stay for a while, maybe a week,
Okay.
and then you'd go back. Yeah.
Wow. So your dad came here in 1910.
Yeah.
And then when did your mom come to the U.S.? Oh, she was the
Yeah,
ambassador.
right. She came to the United States when she was 18 years old. My mom was born 1910
Where was she born?
in China.
Where?
Oh, Guangdong, yeah.
That's the same-
Zhongshanyin. She was born in the village.
Zhongshanyin? Where's that?
Zhongshanyin. That was in Canton, Guangdong.
Okay.
And Sun Yat-sen was the Chinese savior.
Yep.
And she was in the same village as that. And
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was, oh, golly. I just remember.
Why
it
was Sun Yat-sen the Chinese savior?
Well, because Chinese people, the Japanese people were invading China.
Yep.
And then they had to build their armies up. And, that's how Sun Yat-sen became, the head. And then after Sun Yat-sen, it was General Chiang Kai-shek.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
General Chiang
Wow.
Kai-shek. And General Chiang Kai-shek did not speak English, and he married one of the wealthiest families, was a Shung family. Shung dynasty had several women who were, well educated. And Madame Chiang Kai-shek was one of the Shung sisters, and she came to the United States, and she would speak on behalf of China.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Madame Chiang.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. When you were still
Yeah, young.
alive?
Oh yeah.
Really?
I was just a young kid when the war started.
World War One.
Yeah.
She would come to the U.S. and say, "Hey, help China out."
Yeah. Oh yeah. She would say.
U.S. give your support to China.
Yeah, and China would give their support to the United States then.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's how they formed the Allied powers.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of history, huh?
A lot of history. So she would come. She was married to King.
Chiang
Chiang
Kai-shek.
Kai-shek.
Yeah.
Wow. And so she would come in to
Yeah.
get support.
Yeah. Speak on his behalf. Yeah.
Because she was educated and spoke English.
Yeah.
Wow.
All these girls were sent to the United States for education. Yeah, it was very popular that way. They would
Yeah.
send their kids out.
That's still the case. They
Yeah.
come to the U.S. to get an
Yeah,
education.
Yeah. And then
Interesting.
get a foot in the United States too to become a citizen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, everyone always wanted U.S. citizenship. So what was the connection between that and how your mom came with a diplomat? What did the diplomat know Chiang Kai-shek? Or?
Oh no.
Okay, so who was that diplomat and where were they from in China?
They were. The ambassador was from the village where my mom was. He was older, and when the United States sent him to Peru, he had already married a very young lady. Very much. He must have been 40 when he married her, and then they had.
And how old was she?
When she went, she was probably the same age as my mom because she begged my mom to go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because she said, she had no friends there and she didn't speak the language.
So you think she was like under 20?
Probably.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
my mother, you know how old my mother was? She was only 12. She did not want to go.
So her friend could have been 15, could have been a couple of years different from your mom.
Maybe, yeah. And my grandmother, which I never knew, she said to my mother, you go with the ambassador because, you'll have servants to help, and then it's a good way for you to maybe eventually go to United States. Yeah.
Really? It was all about getting to the United States.
What?
It was all about getting to the United States.
Well, eventually, because she knew the ambassador had good, connections, and they trusted, that she would be okay there. Well, when she got there, of course, they had servants, but then the ambassador wouldn't pay them well, and the servants got mad, and one by one they fled. So then
They ran away in Peru.
Yeah, they just left, and so then my mother would learn how to cook when they watched, how the servants would make things, and then she and another young lady went from China, and they landed up watching the kids and doing some cooking. Then after that they came to the United States.
Really? How'd they get to the U.S.?
Well, they were match made.
Really?
Yeah.
From Lima?
From Peru, they were match made. Some people, I guess my grandmother and grandfather would be the ones who chose somebody, and they chose my dad. And so my mother never knew anything about my dad. She got to the United States, and a couple of weeks later, she was married to my dad.
Oh my gosh.
That happened so much to the young ladies who came. Yeah.
Jeez. All they could do is be married into things and match made. They had such little power or choice over what they could do.
No choice.
No choice.
No choice.
That's crazy. So she learned how to cook from the servants, and then she...
Oh, I better.
Oh, you better get ready for your meeting.
Yeah. We can continue next time.
Yes.
Yeah, next time.
We have a great episode here. Thank you, Papa.
Yeah. But at least you got it in your, you can remember.
This will be recording in the archives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then Amy would do her side of the family,
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.